In fact, trade missions in all different forms and sizes are happening regularly. The ACT recently sent a trade delegation to Singapore, the mission led by the ACT Treasurer. One of the participants was successful Canberra web startup OnTheGo. Founded 4 years ago, it sells custom-branded sports gear to teams, to companies, to governments and others. The founder and 100% owner is Mick Spencer. Now, I actually first met Mick when we participated in a panel discussion that I hosted last year, which included 3 other influential thinkers and, yes, Sir Richard Branson, and we discussed and debated the future of business. So a good chance to catch up with Mick Spencer from OnTheGo. He's with me now in studio. Mick, good to have you in the studio.
Yeah,
and to hear where OnTheGo is up to after that big event, which, of course, we broadcast on Sky News Business. You originally, of course, were operating in Australia. You expanded into China and now part of this trade mission recently to Singapore. You actually signed a new deal on that trade mission. Tell us about that deal.
Yeah, we did, Brooke. So we are a wholesaler to what just got voted as the #1 franchise in the world, Anytime Fitness, big 24/7 health club chain. So we supply all their uniforms, member products and apparel. We actually just signed their Asia expansion as well, which is really exciting. So we utilised the ACT trade mission to Singapore to activate and launch that. And they're expecting to grow to 1,000 clubs in 5 years, and Singapore being that massive hub for them. So,
you haven't been part of one of these delegations before, so I guess that's a step up for you. Just tell us a bit about what it's like to be part of that. Who else is going, and what are you going over to try and achieve out of these? Because, I mean, ultimately these are being funded by taxpayer dollars as well.
Definitely, Brooke. 50 cents in the dollar is what we're going to get back for the assistance in going over. I was very surprised. There's a broad range of different businesses and organisations that go. We had approximately 45 different people on the trip, comprising about 30 different organisations from sport. There was business, there was tourism, there was technology. Technology had the biggest input because of the communication fair that was in Singapore at that time. But there was also, a lot of sport. The ACT Brumbies, the University of Canberra Brumbies came. The Vice-Chancellor of the University of Canberra and ANU came over. So anyone who was trying to, for us, expand the Canberra brand into Singapore and vice versa, get Singapore into Canberra.
And why, I mean, how do they explain to you in terms of being part of expanding the Canberra brand? Why are you doing that? In terms of a bigger picture, I mean, you've kind of got your operations in China. As I said, you've already struck deals. So why be a part of that delegation? Why is that important for you?
Well, as a whole for Canberra, the biggest thing is we're trying to get direct flights to Canberra from Singapore. So Stephen Byron, the Managing Director of the Canberra Airport, was very dominant on the trip, and he had some great meetings with Singapore Airlines and the various. For us, it's a chance. We know Canberra's got a really bright future. There's a lot happening there. The city's growing at a rate of knots. We want to start to, I suppose, see our brand and products over there. We're exporting out of Canberra to there, but we're also exporting directly out of China to Singapore. So it's...
When did you start that expansion into Asia?
About 18 months ago, we picked up our first customer, which was in Japan. We were supplying to the Ironman Japan over there, which we did about 6,000 units for. And that was when I realised how, with setting up supply chain capabilities with online and great express couriers, we could really be competitive on ground to other players. So,
see, that's interesting because, I mean, the outsider says, can't anyone start up a company where you print stuff on T-shirts and sell it into Asia? There's a heap of business there. So why do you, what do you think is it about you guys that's making actual inroads and getting these kinds of deals?
From the very early days when I committed to filling an order of 300 cycling jerseys in 2 to 3 weeks, no one in the world was doing it. I realised that giving users the experience for them to design what they wanted beyond what they ever thought was possible was the opportunity we had. And we've continued to do that.
Customisation.
Yeah, so the real customisation, but bridging that high quality. When I entered the industry, it was full of providers who were doing that printing on T-shirts, but the quality was terrible.
Yeah, right.
The turnaround times were 8 to 12 weeks, and you had to order 1 to 500 units at once. We introduced a model where it was 5-piece minimums, 4-week turnarounds to any doorstep in the world, and high-quality customised products.
And that remains your competitive advantage in the region?
Yep. If we don't deliver it on our 4 weeks, it's it's money back.
Yep. You've made some mistakes in Asia, as so many small companies going into these big markets, big unknown markets, have. What would you say has been the biggest one so far, and what's the takeout, I suppose?
A lot. I mean, the hardest one is choosing suppliers. Choosing the right suppliers in a business that relies totally on manufacturing is hard, and keeping them accountable to that. We've had several errors, as any growing company.
Absolutely.
There was a 12-month period where in February, the year before, we did 2,000 units in a month. The February the year after, we did 25,000 units in that month, and that's quite big growth.
Yeah.
So that has its issues. I think
Sure.
the biggest problem I've had was choosing the wrong supplier, not doing my due diligence and losing money in putting money into a supplier's account who was a hoax.
Okay, and you lost
That
quite
was
a bit of
years
money
ago.
on that one.
Yeah, that was years ago, but
Yeah.
that was a big lesson.
Just reflecting back on our experience where we sat on a panel with Richard Branson at an event up in Brisbane, one of the questions that we talked about in that panel discussion was the Asian century, and you know, something that businesses are talking about all the time: facilitating strong, productive, long-term relationships and long-term business in Asia. And I guess long-term is probably the key part of that question. What do you think is the answer to doing that as a small business making your own way?
Well, there's a lot of areas. I mean, I think the funniest one I said was, you know, that it's all about drinking whiskey with the owner of the factory.
It's about relationships, isn't it?
It's all about relationships, you know, whether it's China, whether it's Singapore, whether it's Hong Kong, Philippines, Malaysia. They're all about relationships and they're all about long term. So if you can speak their language, you know, it is tough. When we went to China to get manufacturers in the early days, no one wanted to talk to us.
Yeah.
I had to go down to working late at nights to help factories marketing to get them to accept orders for us. So it's relationships and having that long-term vision, I think, is a big one.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, Mick Spencer. Great to catch up with you. Thank you so much, and congratulations on that new deal that you've just launched in Singapore as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Brooke.
Mick Spencer from On The Go, and coming up, we've got plenty more here on Business Agenda. Stay with us.